Some stories begin beyond the porch. So let's begin.
I never believed in love at first sight until I met her covered in horse manure, yelling at me in the middle of a Montana thunderstorm. But let me back up, because that's not even the craziest part of this whole thing. So my parents basically exiled me to my grandparents' ranch in the middle of absolute nowhere, Montana, because apparently crashing your dad's BMW into a fountain at the country club is where they draw the line. Who knew, right? I mean, it wasn't even that bad. The car still worked. The fountain, though, not so much. Anyway, my dad gave me this whole speech about responsibility and learning the value of hard work. And honestly, I stopped listening after the first 5 minutes because I was too busy calculating how long I'd have to endure this punishment. 3 months, 90 days of my summer. Gone. The drive up there took forever, and my phone died somewhere around hour 6, and I didn't even have a car charger, because apparently my dad thought taking away my ability to contact civilization was part of the whole character-building experience. When we finally pulled up to this massive ranch with mountains in the background that looked like something out of a postcard, my stomach just dropped. This was real. This was actually happening. "Maybe this'll teach you some responsibility, Carter," my dad said, as he practically shoved my suitcases out of the trunk. He didn't even help me carry them to the porch, just waved at my grandpa, who was standing there in overalls and a flannel shirt, looking way too happy about this whole situation, then drove off in a cloud of dust. My grandpa hugged me and told me how excited he was. I'd be spending the summer, and I tried to smile, but I'm pretty sure it came out more like a grimace. The ranch was huge, like bigger than I expected. There were horses everywhere, chickens running around, even some cows in the distance. It smelled like hay and dirt and animal, and I already missed my apartment back in Seattle with its filtered air and DoorDash. "You'll start tomorrow morning, 5 a.m., Grandpa said cheerfully, as he showed me to this tiny room that would be mine for the next 3 months. It had a bed, a dresser, and one sad little window that overlooked the barn. No TV, no Wi-Fi password in sight. I literally wanted to die. But that first night, I couldn't sleep, because apparently roosters don't wait until a reasonable hour to start screaming, and also my bed felt like it was stuffed with rocks. When my alarm went off at 4:45 the next morning, I seriously considered faking sick. But my grandpa was already knocking on my door, telling me breakfast was ready, and we had a full day ahead. I stumbled downstairs in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, my hair probably sticking up in every direction, and that's when I saw her for the first time. She was sitting at the kitchen table, eating scrambled eggs and toast, her dark red hair pulled back in this messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. She had freckles across her nose, and these green eyes that looked up at me when I walked in, and for a second I forgot how to breathe. "Carter, this is Sienna," my grandpa said. "She's been helping out on the ranch for the past year. Sienna, this is my grandson I told you about." "The one who crashed into the fountain?" she asked, and there was this little smirk on her face that made my cheeks burn. "It was an accident," I mumbled, sliding into a chair across from her. "Sure it was," she said, and went back to her eggs. I hated how pretty she was. Like it actually annoyed me, because I was supposed to be miserable here, and having a cute girl around was not part of the plan. Plus, she clearly already thought I was some spoiled rich kid. Which, okay, fair, but still. Breakfast was awkward. My grandpa kept talking about all the chores we'd be doing, and Sienna just sat there, nodding along like she actually enjoyed the idea of shoveling horse stalls and fixing fences in the Montana heat. I tried not to stare at her, but it was hard because she had this energy about her, like she was completely comfortable in her own skin in a way I'd never been. After breakfast, Grandpa handed me a pair of work gloves and boots that were 2 sizes too big and told me to follow Sienna to the stables. She walked ahead of me without saying anything, and I had to practically jog to keep up with her long strides. "So, how'd you end up here?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "Working," she said, without looking back. "Yeah, but why? What's your story?" She stopped and turned around so fast I almost crashed into her. "My story is none of your business, Fountain Boy. You're here to work, so let's work." Fountain Boy. Great. That was apparently going to be my nickname now. The stables were huge and smelled exactly how you'd expect, and Sienna handed me a pitchfork and pointed to one of the stalls. "Start there. Clean it out completely. Then spread fresh hay. I'll be doing the other stalls." I stared at the pitchfork like it was a foreign object, which honestly, it kind of was. "You're not going to show me how? How hard is it to shovel horse poop, Carter?" She raised an eyebrow at me, and I swear there was challenge in those green eyes. "Right. Obviously. I knew that." I did not know that. The next hour was probably the worst of my entire life. The smell was horrible. My arms started hurting after 10 minutes, and I kept slipping on the stable floor because these stupid 2 big boots had 0 traction. Meanwhile, Sienna was moving through her stalls like some kind of ranch professional, and making it look easy while I struggled with my one single stall. At one point, I looked up and she was watching me, leaning against a post with her arms crossed, and she was trying not to laugh. "What?" I asked, wiping sweat off my forehead with my arm. "Nothing. You're just very entertaining to watch." "Glad I could amuse you," I muttered, going back to my pathetic attempt at shoveling. "Here," she said, walking over. She took the pitchfork from my hands and demonstrated the proper technique, her movements smooth and practiced. "Like this. Use your legs, not your back, and don't try to lift too much at once." She handed the pitchfork back to me, and our fingers touched for just a second, and I swear I felt electricity shoot up my arm. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment neither of us moved. And then she stepped back quickly and cleared her throat. "Try it now," she said, her voice a little different than before. I did what she showed me, and yeah, it was definitely easier. "Thanks." "Whatever. Just don't hurt yourself. Your grandpa would kill me if you ended up in the hospital on day 1. The days started blending together after that. Wake up at an ungodly hour. Work until my muscles screamed. Eat lunch while trying not to fall asleep. Work some more. Dinner. Pass out. Repeat. It was exhausting and horrible, and everything I expected. Except for Sienna. She was there every day, working alongside me, and slowly she started warming up. Not a lot, but enough that she'd actually talk to me sometimes. I learned she was 19, just a year older than me, and she'd grown up in a small town in Wyoming. She didn't talk about her family much, but I got the sense things weren't great there. She'd been working on my grandpa's ranch to save money for college, wanted to study veterinary medicine. "You're good with the animals," I said one afternoon, while we were feeding the horses. I'd noticed how gentle she was with them, how they seemed to trust her immediately. She shrugged. "Animals are easier than people." "Can't argue with that." She glanced at me. "You're not as useless as I thought you'd be." "Wow, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me," I said, and she actually laughed. It was the first time I'd heard her really laugh, and the sound did something weird to my chest. 2 weeks in, something shifted. We were working on repairing a fence in the far pasture, just the 2 of us, and it started raining. Not like a gentle rain either, like the sky just opened up and dumped everything it had on us. We tried to run back to the barn, but we were soaked within seconds. We ended up taking shelter in this old equipment shed, both of us dripping water everywhere and breathing hard from running. My shirt was plastered to my skin, and her hair had come loose from its ponytail and was hanging in wet strands around her face. "Well, that was dramatic," I said, trying to catch my breath. She was wringing out her hair, and when she looked up at me, there was something different in her expression. Softer, maybe. You've got mud on your face." "So do you." She tried to wipe it off, but just smeared it more, and I laughed and reached out without thinking to help her. My thumb brushed across her cheek and she went very still, her eyes locked on mine. We were standing so close, I could see little gold flecks in her green eyes and count the freckles on her nose, and my heart was beating so loud I was sure she could hear it. "Carter," she said quietly, and there was a warning in her voice, but also something else, something that made my breath catch. "Yeah? This is a bad idea." "What is?" But I knew what. I knew exactly what she meant, because I was thinking the same thing. The rain pounded on the roof, and neither of us moved, and the air between us felt electric, charged with something I couldn't name but felt in every cell of my body. But then my phone buzzed in my pocket, making both of us jump. I'd finally gotten it charged the night before, and somehow there was one bar of service out here. I pulled it out and saw a text from my dad asking how I was doing, and just like that, the moment shattered. Sienna stepped back, creating distance between us. "Rain's letting up. We should head back." "Sienna, come on," she said, already pushing the shed door open. I followed her back to the main house, my mind racing, replaying those few seconds in the shed over and over. What would have happened if my phone hadn't buzzed? Would she have kissed me? Would I have kissed her? Did I want to kiss her? Yeah. I really did. That evening at dinner, my grandpa was telling some story about his youth, but I wasn't listening. Thus I kept glancing at Sienna across the table, and she kept very carefully not looking at me. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. After dinner, I helped with dishes while Sienna went to check on the horses one more time before bed. When she came back in through the kitchen door, she looked upset. Her eyes were red, like maybe she'd been crying. "Hey, you okay?" I asked. She nodded, but didn't say anything, just stood there in the doorway looking lost. "Sienna, seriously, what's wrong?" She took a deep breath. "My family sent me here to learn a lesson," she said quietly. "Said I needed to grow up, stop dreaming about impossible things, face reality." My heart clenched. "That's why you're here?" I thought, everyone thinks I'm just a ranch hand saving for college. But the truth is my family basically kicked me out. Well, told me if I wanted to waste my life chasing fairy tales, I could do it on my own. I didn't know what to say. Here I'd been feeling sorry for myself about 3 months on a ranch, when she'd been dealing with actual rejection from her family. "Their loss," I finally said. "You're gonna be an amazing vet someday." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and her eyes were shining with unshed tears. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." We stood there in the kitchen, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of crickets outside. Something was building between us, something big and scary and inevitable. "Then let me teach you," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "Let me teach you that not everyone gives up on people, that sometimes people surprise you. Yeah, that maybe some dreams aren't as impossible as you think." Her breath caught. "Carter." The kitchen door swung open, and my grandpa walked in, asking if we'd locked up the chicken coop, and the moment was gone again, slipping through my fingers like water. But later that night, lying in my uncomfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about the look in her eyes, the way she'd said my name, the way my entire body had responded to being near her. I was supposed to be learning a lesson this summer, but I was starting to think Sienna was going to teach me something my family never intended. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, which never happens. My brain wouldn't shut off thinking about Sienna and what I'd said in the kitchen and the way she'd looked at me. I got dressed in the dark and headed downstairs, figuring I'd get a head start on chores and maybe catch her alone before my grandpa woke up. But when I got to the stables, she was already there with the horses, brushing down this big brown mare named Daisy. She didn't hear me come in at first, and I just watched her for a second, the way she moved so carefully, humming something under her breath. "You're up early," she said, without turning around. "How'd you know it was me?" "Your footsteps. You walk different than your grandpa." She glanced over her shoulder. "Couldn't sleep?" "Not really. You?" "Never sleep much." She went back to brushing Daisy. "Look, about last night." "You don't have to explain anything." "But I want to." She set down the brush and turned to face me. Her hair was in a braid today, and she had on this faded denim jacket over her work shirt. "When I came here, and I promised myself I wouldn't get distracted. I have goals, plans, I can't afford to mess this up." My stomach sank. "And I'm a distraction?" "A really annoying one," she said, but there was the tiniest smile on her face. "You show up here all privileged and clueless, and somehow you're actually nice underneath all that. And you listen when I talk about vet school like it's not stupid. And you smell like pine trees even after working with horses all day, which doesn't make any sense. I smell like pine trees? That's what my brain decided to focus on?" She laughed, and it eased some of the tension in my chest. "You're missing the point. No, I get it. You think I'm a distraction. But Sienna, maybe that's not a bad thing. Like, maybe taking a break from being so focused all the time isn't the end of the world. Easy for you to say. Why, you've got a family to fall back on. Money. Options. I've got this." She gestured around the stable. "This job, this chance. If I blow it, I've got nothing." The way she said it made something crack inside me. I walked closer, stopping right in front of her. "You really think your worth is tied to just working yourself to death? That's what they want you to believe, isn't it? Your family?" Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand. Then help me understand." For a long moment, she just stared at me, and I could see her wrestling with something internal, deciding whether to let me in or push me away. Finally, she sighed. "My dad told me I was wasting everyone's time with my dreams. Said girls like me from towns like mine don't become veterinarians. We become checkout clerks and waitresses." When I said I'd prove him wrong, he told me to get out and not come back until I'd learned my place. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "So, yeah, Carter. This matters. All of it matters." I wanted to hug her so badly my arms actually ached. "He's wrong. He's completely wrong, and also kind of a terrible father for saying that to you." "Maybe. But what if he's right? What if I fail? Then you fail, and you try again. That's how life works." I reached out and touched her arm gently. "But I don't think you're gonna fail. I think you're the most determined person I've ever met, and that counts for something." She looked down at where my hand rested on her arm, then back up at my face. "Why are you being so nice to me?" "Because you deserve nice. We barely know each other." "I know enough." I repeated what I'd said last night. "And I want to know more, if you'll let me." The air between us felt heavy with possibility. She didn't pull away from my touch, and I could feel her pulse under my fingers, rapid and strong. "This is complicated," she whispered. "Most good things are." She opened her mouth to respond, but then we heard my grandpa's voice calling from the house, and she stepped back quickly, putting distance between us again. "We should get to work." The whole day felt different after that conversation. We worked side by side fixing more fence posts, and she taught me how to properly saddle a horse, and we didn't talk about anything important, but everything felt charged somehow. It like we'd crossed some invisible line and couldn't go back. At lunch, my grandpa mentioned there was a town festival that weekend, some summer thing with food trucks and live music. "You two should go," he said casually. "Take the afternoon off. You've been working hard." Sienna and I looked at each other across the table. "I don't know," she started. "Come on," I said. "When's the last time you did something just for fun?" "I have fun." "Name one thing you've done for fun since I got here." She couldn't, and I could tell it bothered her. "Fine, but we're not calling it a date." "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, but I was grinning like an idiot. Saturday came, and we drove into town in my grandpa's old truck. But Sienna wore jeans and a green tank top that made her eyes look even brighter, and I'd actually tried to do something with my hair for once. The festival was bigger than I expected. The main street blocked off with booths and stages, and the smell of barbecue everywhere. We walked around looking at stuff, and she actually seemed to relax, laughing at a terrible juggler and winning a stuffed horse at one of those rigged carnival games. I bought us lemonade, and we sat on a bench watching people dance to a country band. "This is nice," she admitted. "I forgot what this feels like." "What?" "Being normal, not worrying about tomorrow." She took a sip of her lemonade. "Thank you for making me come." "Any time." She looked at me sideways. "You're leaving in like 6 weeks." My stomach dropped because I'd been trying not to think about that. Yeah. So what is this? What are we doing?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But does it have to be something defined right now? Can't we just see what happens?" "That's not really how I operate." "Maybe that's your problem." She laughed, but it sounded sad. "Maybe it is." The band finished their song and started a slower one. Couples moved onto the makeshift dance floor, and I stood up, holding out my hand to her. "Dance with me." "Carter, I don't dance." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." She hesitated, then took my hand and let me pull her up. We moved to the edge of the dance floor, and I put my arms around her waist carefully, like she might bolt any second. She rested her hands on my shoulders, and we swayed awkwardly to the music. "This is weird," she said. Very weird. I'm bad at this." "You're perfect," I said without thinking, and she looked up at me with these wide eyes. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because it makes me want to believe you." The song swelled around us, and people danced, and somewhere a kid was laughing. But all I could see was her face tilted up toward mine, her lips slightly parted, her eyes searching mine for something I desperately wanted to give her. "Then believe me," I whispered. She was about to respond when someone bumped into us hard from behind, breaking the moment. We stumbled apart, and I turned to see who it was, and my blood went cold. There was a guy standing there, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a sneer on his face. He was looking at Sienna like he knew her. Well, he said. "Sienna Harper. I didn't expect to see you here." All the color had drained from Sienna's face. "Kyle." "Who's this?" Kyle looked me up and down dismissively. "New boyfriend?" "None of your business," Sienna said, but her voice shook slightly. "Everything about you is my business, remember? Or did you forget our deal?" "We don't have a deal anymore. I told you that." Kyle's smile was nasty. "That's not what your daddy says. He called me last week, said you'd be coming home soon, said you'd learned your lesson." I stepped forward, anger flaring hot in my chest. "Hey man, she said it's none of your business. Maybe take the hint." Kyle's eyes narrowed. Maybe you should stay out of things you don't understand, rich boy. How did he? Come on, Carter, let's go. Sienna grabbed my arm and pulled me away before I could say anything else. But we walked quickly through the crowd back toward the truck, her hand tight around my wrist. Sienna, what was that? Who is that guy? She didn't answer until we were in the truck with the doors locked. Then she dropped her head into her hands. That's Kyle Morrison, my ex-boyfriend. She took a shaky breath. And apparently my future husband, if my father gets his way. My entire world tilted sideways. What? I just sat there staring at her, my brain trying to process what she just said. Your father wants you to marry that guy? It's complicated. She was still holding her head in her hands, and her voice was muffled. Kyle's family owns half the businesses in my hometown. My dad thinks if I marry him, I'll be set for life. Secure. He arranged it before I left. He had said when I came back we'd have an engagement party. But you don't want that. Of course I don't want that. She looked up at me, and her eyes were fierce. Kyle's a jerk who thinks he owns me. That's part of why I came here, to get away from all of it. I thought maybe if I proved I could make it on my own, my dad would back off. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles turned white. So what? He's just gonna force you into a marriage? He can't force me. But he can make my life hell if I don't do what he wants. Cut me off completely. Turn the whole town against me. She laughed bitterly. You know what the worst part is? Kyle doesn't even love me. He just wants to win. Wants to prove he can have whatever he decides he wants. I turned to face her fully. Sienna, you can't go back there. I don't have a choice. Well, where else am I gonna go? I've got like $2,000 saved. That's not enough for first and last month's rent anywhere, let alone tuition. Then stay here. Keep working for my grandpa. He loves having you around. You know he does. And then what? Hide out on a ranch forever? She shook her head. That's not a life, Carter. That's just running away. So what's your plan? Go back and marry Kyle? No, I don't know. Maybe I just accept that some dreams are too big for people like me. That made me so angry I could barely speak. Stop saying that. Stop acting like you're less than everyone else just because you came from a small town with crappy parents. You're smart and hardworking and good with animals, and you deserve every single thing you want out of life. You sound like a motivational poster. I'm serious. Sienna. She looked at me for a long moment. Why do you even care so much? You're leaving in 6 weeks anyway. Back to your real life in Seattle where girls like me don't exist. Girls like you are the only ones who exist, I said. Everyone else is just boring. Despite everything, she smiled a little. You're ridiculous. Yeah, well, you make me ridiculous. I reached over and took her hand. Look, I know I'm just some dumb kid who crashed his dad's car and got sent to a ranch. I know I don't have all the answers. But I know you're not supposed to give up on your dreams because some people told you you weren't good enough. And I know that guy back there doesn't deserve you. And you do? The question hung in the air between us. Did I deserve her? Probably not. But that didn't stop me from wanting to try. I want to, I said quietly. I want to deserve you. Her eyes got shiny with tears. Carter, just listen. I've got some money saved up. Not a ton, but enough to help. And my mom's best friend is a veterinarian in Seattle. She's always looking for assistance. You could stay with us while you figure things out. Apply to schools out there. My parents would help. I know they would once they met you. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. I squeezed her hand. Come back with me. At the end of summer. Just try it. If it doesn't work out, you can always leave. But at least give yourself a real chance instead of just giving up. She was crying for real now, tears sliding down her cheeks. Why are you being so nice to me? Oh, we've known each other like 3 weeks. 4 weeks, actually. And because when you know, you know. Isn't that what people say? That's so cheesy. You love it, though. She laughed through her tears, and then suddenly she was kissing me, leaning across the center console and pressing her lips to mine. It was messy and tasted like salt and lemonade, and it was the best thing I'd ever felt in my entire life. When she pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? Okay, I'll come to Seattle. I'll try." She wiped her eyes. "But if this doesn't work out, if your parents hate me, or your mom's friend doesn't have a job, or it'll work out. I promise." "You can't promise that. Watch me." We drove back to the ranch, holding hands. And when my grandpa saw us, he just smiled, like he'd known all along this would happen. That night, Sienna and I sat on the porch watching the stars and making plans. Real plans. She'd finish out the summer working, save every penny she could. I'd talk to my parents, get everything set up. She'd apply to the University of Washington's pre-vet program for spring semester. "What if Kyle comes back?" she asked, her head resting on my shoulder. "Then I'll deal with him." "My hero," she said sarcastically, but she was smiling. "I'm serious. Nobody's gonna pressure you into anything you don't want. Not while I'm around." She tilted her head up to look at me. "You really mean all of this, don't you? This isn't just some summer thing for you. This is the most real thing I've ever felt," I said honestly. "You're the most real thing I've ever felt." She kissed me again, slower this time, sweeter. And when we finally went inside, I felt like maybe my dad was right about one thing. Maybe this summer was teaching me something important, just not the lesson he expected. The rest of summer flew by in this blur of early mornings and hard work and stolen moments with Sienna. My parents called every week, and I finally told them about her, about my plan. My mom was hesitant at first, but after talking to Sienna on the phone for an hour, she was completely on board. My dad took more convincing, but eventually he agreed, probably because he was just shocked I was taking initiative about something that wasn't a party. Kyle tried texting Sienna a few times, but she blocked his number. Her dad called once, and she actually stood up to him, told him she was making her own choices now. He yelled a lot, but eventually hung up and didn't call back. On my last day at the ranch, my grandpa pulled me aside. "You did good this summer, kid. Learned a lot about responsibility." "Yeah, about that. And you fell in love, which wasn't part of the plan, but that's life sometimes." He smiled. "Take care of her, Carter. She's special." "I know she is. And she'll take care of you, too. You're good for each other." We loaded up my car with my stuff and Sienna's 2 suitcases that held everything she owned. As we drove away from the ranch, she looked back one more time. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just saying goodbye to who I was, I guess." She turned to me and smiled. "Ready to figure out who I'm gonna be?" I took her hand. "Ready." 6 months later, Sienna got accepted into UW's veterinary program with a partial scholarship. She's living in our guest house and working part-time at my mom's friend's clinic. Where my parents love her, she loves Seattle. We fight sometimes about stupid stuff, and she still works too hard, and I still occasionally forget to take responsibility for things. But every night when I kiss her goodnight, I remember that day in the stable when she said I smelled like pine trees, when we danced at that festival, when she chose to believe in herself because I believed in her first. My family sent me to that ranch to learn a lesson about responsibility. Instead, I learned that sometimes the best lessons are the ones you never saw coming. And sometimes the best things in life are worth fighting for, even when everyone says they're impossible. Especially then.